Welcome to Breathe California TV. Breathe California is the lung health organization for California. Just here in Santa Clara County, we helped 150,000 people last year with breathing difficulties. But today we're going to be talking about ways to cut down on your health risks. We're going to be talking with Dave Williamson about biodiesel fuel and why it can make a difference in your lives.
I have asthma, and so asthma, I can't do that many sports because I wheeze and then I have to take my inhaler. I can't do a lot of things other kids can do. What I learned at asthma camp is how to treat your asthma and don't hold back if you have asthma. Breathe California has made it easier for me to play sports and do other things that I couldn't do before.
Welcome back. I'm Terry Trumbull. This is the Breathe California TV show. I'm talking with Dave Williams today about biodiesel fuel, a real significant subject for your lung health because regular diesel is one of the leading causes of pollution difficulties for our lungs, and transportation is 70% of our issues. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So what in the heck is biodiesel as compared to diesel?
Biodiesel is a transesterified triglyceride. Actually, it's veggie oil.
Which is what I wanted to hear at all. So
it's a methyl ester. It's basically a vegetable oil with the glycerin component removed, and that goes into the makeup or the high explosives market, and you're left with 3 carbon chains called esters. Then we throw in the biodiesel plant, adds methanol, and it becomes a methyl ester.
So biodiesel sounds just like diesel, but it comes from biology.
It's and that's actually one reason why farmers and the Department of Energy, for instance, took an interest in it. It's what is known in the industry as a pour and go fuel. So no significant or actually no modifications at all for certain engines need to be made. Pour in bio and go, you're done.
Essentially the same as diesel in terms of its physical characteristics. It's just a difference in what it's made from, or
no. There's two significant differences. The first is biodiesel is what is known as an oxygenate, or it has more oxygen in it than a diesel atom. And the benefit of that is it produces less particulates. Particulates are a very significant asthma precursor. There's asthma clusters, as most of your audience may know, in Oakland, LA, around the port. So biodiesel virtually eliminates 50% of all particulates. That's the things that lodge in your lungs and causes damage.
And that's just from the extra oxygen in the formulation.
Yes, and then also one of the benefits to that as well is the other thing that biodiesel has is fewer aromatics, or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and these are chemicals that form or cause mutagenic effects, or mutagens or carcinogens that cause cancer and birth defects. Biodiesel eliminates those virtually, reduces those by over 85%.
So again, you can correct me here, but when we have when we pump our own gas, there's a collection mechanism to make sure that the light, the volatile, the aromatic hydrocarbons don't go off. And so that's the sort of thing you're talking about.
Exactly, and 35% of diesel, maybe somewhere around there, is what we call light, sort of light fraction. With biodiesel, that's not there. You can virtually smoke around it. And so there's any kind of vapor or explosion or fire risk from that.
So it sounds great. So tell us a little bit about your company and what their role is in biodiesel.
I'm a consultant now, and one of my primary client is Western States Oil. They're a local petroleum distributor.
Redwood City.
Yeah, Redwood City. And one of my roles there is I set up a program where they can purchase restaurant oil and from here in the Bay Area. And we actually have production contracts with plants in California, And we bring that back up as biodiesel and use it in local fleets. For instance, SF Muni, the MTA was 20% of the fuel going in that is from biodiesel from local restaurants. For instance, one of the companies work with Salinas Tallow. We buy, if you see a Salinas grease collection bin, chances are that fuel is actually going into bio being used in your community. It's a pretty, if I may say so, it's a fairly innovative program. And one of the things that we did was we had to establish a distribution point in Redwood City, something tailored specifically for biodiesel. Even though it replaces diesel, there are some things that we have to do at a large-scale wholesale end, and it'll keep more of the water out and some of the dirt that we have to treat a little bit differently than diesel. So we were able to do that, and as a consequence, we've been able to introduce a fuel into Silicon Valley, and the peninsula certainly, like I said, eliminates 50% particulates, 50% decrease in carbon monoxide, 85% decrease in sulfur compounds, and 85% decrease in carcinogens and mutagens.
So I assume this is the harbor area of Redwood City.
That's
off
right.
of 101?
That's right. We've teamed with a company called Seaport Environmental and Refining, and so we've been distributing we've been moving our biodiesel out of there into San Francisco, as well as San Jose, Redwood City, and around the Milpitas area as well. In fact, our biodiesel goes up to Berkeley and on into Larkspur, so we kind of circle the bay.
So it sounds like your principal input is restaurant oil.
Mm-hmm.
How come you're paying for it? You would think that's a waste they'd want to get rid of.
Well, a lot of people, the beauty about any kind of waste to energy project is that the waste eventually becomes valuable and it becomes a commodity, and hence we're not wasting it anymore. It's not going into the landfill, it's going towards a higher end use. And so we've seen that with restaurant oil. People used to pay you to take it away. Now now folks charge you if you want to take it away, and that's a good thing.
I'm really not making this up. I used to be the state garbage man, and we had lots of pictures of garbage as gold. Technically, it was chair of the waste management board.
Oh, okay.
Now it's called Cal Recycle. But the fact of the matter is that there's probably competition for this restaurant oil.
It's heavy, and that's precisely right. And so the benefit is that it's not being disposed of in a legal manner, or that is frankly quite rare nowadays. Ironically, my background's solid waste as well, the recycling, and so we there is, and this is kind of a unique thing for our state here in California. Because of our climate conditions and the expense of farming here, we tend to not have a good situation here to grow soybeans or any kind of oil-producing crops. But I want to mention something. A lot of people view biodiesel as a Midwestern phenomenon, and actually it's not. It's produced here. There's 6 significant biodiesel plants, and most of their I'm going to go on a limb here. I say most of their raw materials, or as we say, feedstock, come from California itself. So it's a California-centric industry.
Well, let's kind of establish a baseline here. Mm-hmm. My brother lives in Idaho.
Yeah.
So he goes to a restaurant there. What would a normal distribution, what would you normally do with old restaurant oil?
From Idaho?
I'm talking about a spot where there isn't any demand for it. They don't seem to be very worried about alternative energy development. Would somebody burn it or just throw it away in a landfill? Or?
Actually, at this point, I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that. It's being collected all over the country now.
So there isn't any place I can get away with acting like they're bad and we're good?
Not really.
Okay.
And it's not in their financial interest anymore to do that.
Yeah.
And so, Idaho, there's a canola crop region up there, and so every state has its own little thing.
Well, I was just trying to establish how bad it was before we started reusing it.
Actually, it was, yeah, and it was a big problem with people collecting it and illegally dumping it. It's a problem here in the Bay Area, and there's still some issues in communities with older sewer laterals. It gets in the drains and it clogs sewers, and so there's definitely an environmental impact to this stuff. It's grease. You would think it's benign, but if it goes in the wrong place, like anything else, we have to manage it.
So talk a little bit about why there might be some benefit to replacing regular diesel with biodiesel.
Well, diesel is a very efficient fuel. By replacing it with biodiesel, you're able to keep those old power plants in service, which may not be an objective of some regulators perhaps, but it's in service to that. When I managed I was telling your producer, I managed one of the earliest fleets in the United States actually that transitioned to biodiesel. And we had a long-term capitalization plan over, it's actually over 10 years of transitioning all the vehicles to natural gas, for instance. By switching to biodiesel, we were able to keep that program going, but we instantly cleaned up the entire fleet, literally with just a purchase order. It was that simple. And so by doing that, we were able to, like I said, eliminate the particulates and soot. And one thing, and this is something I learned, is that most diesel engines out there are not these over-the-road truckers. They're actually what we call occupational service fleets. And they're engines that burn 7 or 10, maybe 30 gallons a day tops. But what they're doing is they're idling in your neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They're the street sweepers, they're the garbage trucks, they're the recycling trucks, even lawnmowers. And so to clean those trucks up, biodiesel is actually the most cost-effective way of basically knocking down the particulates and the cancer-causing compounds I've been mentioning.
Well, particularly in neighborhoods,
Yes.
as opposed to out on rural roads, you're talking about them being used in urban areas.
We really created a lot of goodwill, and I've been in kind of service industries, as a recycling collector manager. And when we transitioned to biodiesel, I literally had people, this happened to me several times, people walking out of their houses and say, "Is it true you're running your trucks on veggie oil?" I said, "Yes," and they just thanked me for it and went back. We never got that before, even though we were kind of doing, God's work, recycling. So people instantly get it, and so it's an excellent way of generating goodwill in the neighborhood.
So explain a little bit, because most of us with our own personal cars, they're either gas or electric. In my case, it's both, a Prius. Why can't they shut it down? We're used to just walk into a car, turn it on. What is it about a diesel engine that makes them leave it on? Well,
that's actually, I would say simply they're not keeping up to date with technology. You can actually, I know anecdotally, like cab drivers in Norway, they leave those same engines on all winter. Specifically,
but it's minus 20 degrees there all winter.
And diesel, as well as biodiesel, has a high gel point.
Yeah.
And so they keep it on to keep the fuel circulating. And so with bio, we have the same thing. By gel point, I mean the fuel solidifies, say, a little bit below freezing. Not an issue here in California. I ran my fleet through several hard freezes, and the trucks would actually start up slower, but I've always been able to put my vehicles on the road, and had some minor issues. But this is like when it was freezing. During normal weather conditions, biodiesel and certainly diesel works quite well.
We're talking with Dave Williamson about biodiesel fuel, a fuel that's generated in our own community, saves on needing to dig up fossil fuels, and even better, greatly improves our health. We got another 10 minutes to talk about that after this public service announcement.
What it feels like to have an asthma attack is, well, you can't breathe and you can't tell anybody that you're having an asthma attack because you can hardly talk. You can maybe say 1 or 2 words, but you can't say much else. Breathe California has helped me come in contact with more asthmatics and more people who have the same case as I do. It's important to me because I don't feel like I'm alone in the fight against asthma.
Welcome back. I'm Terry Trumbull. I'm the chair as a volunteer of the Environmental Health Committee of Breathe California. We're talking with Dave Williamson about biofuel, which is something Breathe California wants to encourage as much as possible. Dave's been talking about the health advantages here and So, talk a little bit about how it's made. Can you just take vegetable oil and from restaurants and pour it into a truck?
Not really. You can, and there's people who do that. And you have to filter it and put in special injectors in the engine. But and it works mainly on older engines. So but the newer vehicles, this is a personal opinion, one should really use biodiesel. And biodiesel is actually a simple process. Of all the fuels out there, it actually conforms more with what we call green chemistry than, say, oil. You don't have to pressurize something to multiple atmospheres and thousands of degrees. Max temperature in the biodiesel production process is typically 160, 180 degrees, and it's all at 1 atmosphere. So it's a pretty benign process. The fuel is pretty benign. It's the only fuel ever to pass EPA Tier 2 testing.
What's that mean?
Tested on live animals.
Oh.
And they actually, there's no effects. And so we're quite proud of that. The only mal effect that biodiesel does have, if you pour it, say, in a body of water, it will form an oxygen barrier, but veggie oil does that also, like oil and water. And however, there's a pretty innovative company here in the Bay Area, Cytoculture, that actually uses biodiesel to clean up oil spills. They pour bio on say, oil contaminated sand. The bio will sink down, and because it's lighter than water and heavier than oil, lift the oil up, and then the bio will act as an accelerant. It'll feed the bacteria that will actually eat the oil. It's a pretty good way of cleaning up shorelines.
Yeah, I guess so. So when I think of a restaurant, I think more of grease. You referred to as restaurant oil. Are they the same thing?
Termitrade, yeah. We actually call it yellow grease, and there's about 13 different grades of this stuff, and so that's yellow grease is what we use, and we also use the term restaurant oil, so it's interchangeable.
So talk a little bit about how the public is involved with this. If I've got oil from home,
Yeah.
which I can't conceive of, I can't remember any time that I had oil.
Yeah.
Would I take it there, or is it a collection system with restaurants?
The collection system is centers just around restaurants. They're going to use the word hazardous waste disposal facilities, although it's not that dangerous. A lot of them, the one in Alameda County, they will take oil. Some of the biodiesel retailers will accept oil, but most households have very little oil to get rid of. In Berkeley, we actually got a lot of oil around November when people were deep frying turkeys.
Sure.
So
Sure.
And so we had a little collection program then.
So you're on TV.
Yes.
This is going to improve the marketing of the product like crazy. Is there an adequate supply of feedstock, the restaurant oil enough, or are there other biological products that you would be turning to?
Well, once the restaurant oil can, frankly, between restaurants and soybeans and corn oil and all that, we can displace maybe 5 to 7% of all diesel fuel out there. And the next step is what they call cellulosic bio. That is, frankly, is still hasn't been launched yet on a commercial scale. We are also taking restaurant grease and animal fats and tallow. This is from meat packing. We're making that into synthetic diesel, or we call it hydrotreated diesel. So that substance, even though it comes from vegetable oil as well as fats, it's actually the same molecule as diesel. But it's much safer than diesel because, yet again, we eliminate the aromatics, and so it's essentially a kind of a more benign form of diesel, and from a biological source.
Yeah, and neither one of us can probably overemphasize the advantage of oxygen in the fuel for burning cleanly.
Yes, that's actually the key ingredient, and so that, as I said, that eliminates the particulates especially, and the soots.
So how big of a deal is this? Are we talking about not making much of an impact, but we're being good guys, or where does the potential of biodiesel fit in?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, because I had some experience with this, I think the best application of biodiesel is in service vehicles. because they have, even though you have low mileage, you have a huge impact. And
So my sink broke down, a plumber would be a good one. They've got, my plumber has got 10 trucks that he sends out all over the place.
that'd be an ideal market. Also, welders, guys who run generators. If you have to power, a welding set or do some sort of power generation. We've had some concerts run off of biodiesel, so that kind of thing. There is an EPA program, I'm going to shift a little bit right now, called the low carbon, actually called the renewable fuel standard, and that is taking a lot of bio. So a lot of the bio that you're using right now is like 3 or 4%. A lot of the diesel you're using is 3 or 4% bio. And biodiesel, one of the benefits that is not apparent, but biodiesel has the greatest carbon reducing impact of most anything one can do. Back in the day in Berkeley, when we switched to using biodiesel, Berkeley, from that one little step, became the second most sustainable city in the United States, just by the virtue of using biodiesel. About 100 gallons of bio equates to about a metric ton of carbon. So if you're concerned about that, and we all are, we're all under compliance, the gun with AB 32 and other.
Which is California's law to reduce climate change emissions.
You get, using biodiesel, you get more bang for the buck than just about virtually anything. And like I said, it's easy as a purchasing decision.
So you're in our audience hearing this. What would you like us to run out and do as a result of all this?
Well, frankly, if you were to examine your operations, whether you run a small, a lot of companies in Silicon Valley, for instance, do their own transportation, and those buses can be running on bio and portions thereof. I think Google and Apple actually was doing it for a while. Sure. If you are a small businessman, you can actually get market share by running on bio, like landscapers, as I mentioned, welders, carpenters. If you're doing a construction project around a hospital and you're concerned about the emissions impact of your backhoes or your machinery, you can actually run on bio during the course of that job, and that'll instantly clean up the air. And so it's not a permanent choice. It's very contingent as well.
So when we had the Arab oil boycotts, probably not an acceptable term, but it's what we called them in the 70s.
Yes.
We were at about 70% of our oil and gas came from here in the United States. Now we're importing 75%.
Yes.
How's this going to help?
Well, one thing that bio will not do for you is replace OPEC or huge reservoirs of oil. You have to reduce your impact by reducing, frankly, getting more energy efficiency, energy intensity. Switching a very large truck to biodiesel is not the end. It's not the end solution. I view biodiesel as a transition to, say, electric vehicles, other types of fuels. But as a truck operator, I do know these diesel engines are very persistent, and the diesel engines that we have in service now are going to be around for a generation. There's a bus fleet I know of south of here. They made a purchase decision back in the early 70s. They still are running those buses, and they have no intention of getting rid of them because they work.
And diesel historically has much longer life than conventional internal combustion engine.
Exactly. So so biodiesel is a great way of kind of bridging. It's a bridge fuel. I think it's a good term. Yeah. Bridging those particular vehicles until something new or better comes along. So that's how I view biodiesel.
So I think that's a good perspective. I teach energy policy, and so I apologize for this, something that may sound a little bit like, yeah, exactly. But we can't possibly come up with enough fuels for all 7.5 billion of us to live the way we do in the U.S.
Can't do it.
The energy conservation that you're talking about is the key. This is a form of energy conservation, but we need to do much more, is your point.
One thing that benefited with me with the use of biodiesel was the fact that I had a pretty heterogeneous fleet. Yeah. 4 different engines, about 3 different chassis, literally. And so biofuel was the one way I can cover all of that. We were actually looking at doing electric trucks, and reducing the size of our trucks for collection. So we were going to, and this is the company I work for before I decided to get into biofuel time. So there are people looking at that, and so, I always view that, I saw one guy in a parade one time use bio in his huge pickup truck. I'm waiting, wait a minute, I mean, do you really need that truck? Bio's great. You're not going to find a stronger proponent than myself, but you're not really solving the problem if you're if you're using it in a truck that has the same engine as a garbage truck, even though it's a little pickup truck.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got about a minute left now. You may have already given us a great summary, but kind of in 4 or 5 sentences, what do you want our audience to remember about today in biodiesel?
Number one, biodiesel is probably the most cost-effective fuel to immediately transition a fleet to an alternative fuel. Number two, you eliminate carcinogens, mutagens, and you virtually eliminate particulates, which is asthma precursors. Number three, biodiesel is benign in the environment. It actually degrades in the same curve as sugar. And number four, we now, Western States Oil, the National Biodiesel Foundation, it is available here in the Bay Area. There's other biodiesel suppliers in the Bay Area as well. And if you are a decision maker, say with a large company or a community, biodiesel is a very effective way of going.
And from the Breathe California perspective, where anybody listening to this show is breathing unhealthy air, 95% in California of the population, 70% of the whole country, this is going to make a difference.
Yes, and a lot of people are in non-attainment areas, so biodiesel can help.
So we've been talking with Dave Williamson about biodiesel. We'll have another exciting program for you next week with Breathe California.